So Julie, Ed, I'll hand over to you for the screening, and I'll come back to Q&A later.
All right, thank you, David. And hello, Sheila. Hello, Joe. Hi, great to see you always. Hello, Julie. All right, so I'm going to get this started. I just want to give a little background. So I met Sheila Rule in 2013 when Seven was commissioned to make a short film for the nonprofit Think Outside the Cell that she and Joe had started. And it was really looking at sort of, how to deal with the stigma of incarceration, which is a pressing issue, especially in a country that suffers from such mass incarceration. What happens to all the folks who come out, and how do they restart their lives and so forth. So that was how I met Sheila. And then over the next few years, we stayed in touch. And then in 2016, I heard about Joe and her relationship with him. Joe was incarcerated at that point, but I heard he was going to be released in October of 2016. So I thought it would be really great to do a film on these two extraordinary human beings that are living a version of a story we think we all know, or we never even actually think about, but it's quite unique and quite beautiful. Well, my initial idea was it would be a great photo essay, Sheila Rule, former writer for the New York Times, and I would do this photo essay, and well, sure enough, no publication showed any interest. And so it was at that point that I turned to Julie, my wife, my collaborator, and I was saying, well, let's make a film, and take it away.
Oh. And we did have discussions beforehand about, we want to be there tracking the first year of their lives together once Joe was released from prison, thinking that, it's a very traditional model for a film. And I think, we've been at this a long time, and I feel like we're always interested in approaching our work in fresh ways and not sort of just remaking a story that we feel's been told or in a format that's been done. And so we had conversations about, well, how do we do this? How are we going to document this moment in their lives? And do we want to be documenting this moment in their lives? And I think we both felt that it would be insanely intrusive to be trying to shadow you guys to the degree that we normally would if we were going to document your first year together as a married couple. Because at some point you guys would say, hey, we married each other. We didn't marry you guys too, right? This is not a foursome, and you've got to leave our lives because this is intrusive. So we were trying to figure out how to tell this story in a way that would, honor your privacy and your space. But also tell the story that we thought was truly an exceptional story, which is your love story, how you met, how you fell in love. So what I'd like to do at this point is just share the film, because I think the film will speak for itself. And then we can have a discussion around the film and, more importantly, your story, because that's really what's brought us all together. So I'm going to share my screen, and
though currently incarcerated, my spirit is free. I refuse to wallow in self-pity or blame others for my predicament. I learned of your prison ministry program through an acquaintance. I hope to get to know a young woman whose faith in God is strong. Yours truly, Joe Robinson.
While there are members whose faith in God is unbelievably strong, there's not a young woman available to write to you at the moment. Keep the faith, Sheila.
Age really isn't that important. The truth is, I am seeking companionship.
I cannot provide companionship. What I can give you is friendship.
September 12th,
August 10th,
September 13th,
May
17th,
18th, October 2nd, July
November
11th,
5th, December 6th, October 29th, August 1st, 2002. I'm 32 years old and have a 12-year-old son, Joseph. His mother met an untimely death in 1994. She was only 20. I've been incarcerated since March 1992 and have just as long before I'm eligible to appear before a parole board.
I was about 20 years old when you were born, which makes me 52. I have a 13-year-old son who is unbelievably gregarious, kind, and funny.
I had the opportunity to attend college for a year. I've traveled across the country, and I've even taken flying lessons. I dreamed of becoming an airline pilot.
I lived overseas for about 6 years when I was a foreign correspondent in Africa and Europe. I've given up the daily grind of being a reporter, but I'm determined to write a novel. I'm writing about a woman who's in search of herself, who at first doesn't know what she's searching for.
While on the outside, engaging in antisocial behavior, money and material things went to my head. Since my incarceration, I learned it takes more strength to be humble than arrogant.
We have important lessons to learn from each other, and the teaching has already begun, Joe.
Sometime next year, I hope to meet you in person.
I would absolutely love to meet you in person, Joe. So let's plan on sitting and laughing and talking together in the fall, my favorite season. I feel that showing you my novel in its raw stages will be tantamount to standing naked before you. I've been thinking that if I trust you with something this important to me, it's odd that you don't know my last name.
What exactly is the nature of your fears and anxieties? They're real, and we can overcome them together.
I've started feeling concerned that visiting you would change dynamics, tip the scale, alter the balance.
While I understand your concerns, many of which I share, we'd have at least two choices. Either continue our friendship through letters, or we could just go with the flow. The first time we actually laid eyes on each other was October 3rd, 2003.
That morning, I'm thinking, I hope this day supports this beautiful relationship that we've built.
But I was thinking, like, don't screw this up. Don't scare her away.
I was concerned that dynamics would change and we'd end up with rubble at our feet. More than anything, what I remember was Joe revealing the crime he'd committed.
1991, I was in Utica, New York to go to school. I was into selling drugs. This guy confronted me in a very aggressive way about someone who tried to rob him. I didn't have anything to do with it. He put his arm around me. I felt a gun on his waist. I just instinctively grabbed it and shot him. As I was running into the streets 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm thinking, what the hell did I just do?
The plot has taken a direction that I had not outlined or imagined when we started writing the story of Sheila and Joe.
I just got off the phone with Joseph. His grades are up, and he says he loves school. I'd like you to call him and maintain contact. I just miss my son, and being physically free.
I can't begin to imagine how much you must miss your son, Joe. Sometimes when Sean, my son, is spending a weekend away, I listen to the quiet and I miss him. You asked if I had any unusual thoughts since our visit. I imagined us making love to each other.
Guess you've got more courage than me. My feelings for you have been brewing for some time, but I was concerned about the stuff you had in your head.
I still have my stuff going on about our age difference. I remain in conflict about that.
In one of your earliest letters, you matter-of-factly told me that you were 20 years my senior. Sometimes old spirits are housed in relatively young bodies.
If I do not say this, I will explode. I love you. I love you. I am in love with you.
Now I feel liberated. I love you too, Sheila.
The idea of marrying you seemed so far-fetched those few short months ago, but it does not now. At the same time, do you think your sexual desires might be clouding your thinking about marriage? I have to ask myself the same question.
I really do love you, Sheila. Make no mistake about it. In this lifetime, I want to know what it's like to have you as my wife. Visions of such bliss awaken me in the morning. They even invade my space as I shower. Mr. and Mrs. Robinson, I look forward to it.
Mama called yesterday, and I told her that we decided to get married. She cautioned me to walk slow. Everything in my gut tells me I wish you wouldn't do this, she said. I said I really didn't expect her, or most people, to understand, but there are wonderful men with wonderful hearts behind prison walls. If life is a collection of moments, then I collected exquisitely beautiful ones from Saturday to Monday.
Sugar, 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 how's my lovely wife doing? There's so much more we'll experience on our next trailer. We'll dance together, make love. I want to be with you, baby. Our visit today left me sad. Not sure why, but it was pronounced.
Something's changed. Things feel different.
We're all up close and personal with each other's warts, each other's irritating traits and habits.
I think you're more up close and personal with my warts, irritating traits and habits than I am with yours.
It's about striking a balance between our work
I've been
and
working
our
with no
marriage.
time to take
I
a
just
breath,
like more
which has left
sensuality
me
in our
emotionally
marriage.
tired.
I worry that you don't feel like fighting for our marriage.
I don't even feel like trying to
I
be
feel
sensual.
just about tapped out.
I've got too many issues, too many deficits. I'm too tired to be the woman of your dreams.
We both long for me to be home, and it frustrates us that I can't be home at the moment. For the most part, I'm staying in the present, with an eye, of course, on walking out these gates in 2 years.
That's something to really look forward to. A dream come true.
Happy anniversary, sugar. What better way to remember today, August 1st, than to receive my release decision?
How long? Not long. It's so great that those words are now our reality.
I cannot contain my joy that I will be home in 8 weeks. I look forward to finally living our lives together every day in real time.
I sometimes hear an undercurrent of concern or disbelief from some people when I talk about your coming home. There's an unspoken, are you sure? You think you know, but you don't really know.
Whenever the words inmate, prisoner, or convict are hurled at me in an attempt to define my reality, a tumultuous battle rages inside of me. The fact of my incarceration is situational, not definitive proof of any inhumane traits I might possess.
It's been an honor writing to you over the last 14 years, Joe Robinson. The letters have helped me to grow by leaps and bounds, to learn more about you, about me, about us, to build a sturdy marriage. There are those who doubt us, those who do not understand us, and those who do not wish us well. So be it. I'll be so proud to walk down the street with you, finally, hand in hand. I love you, Sheila.
Thank you.
Thank you. So,
It's always emotional to see this.
yeah, especially the ending somehow, that those photos are never fail to well up emotion. I now would like to introduce everybody to Sheila and Joe, whom you know intimately now. And I would love for you both just to introduce yourselves and tell us what you're up to now.
Hi everyone. Like you, I get emotional when I see our relationship told so beautifully. Um, I am writing a novel. It's not the same novel. It's a different one, and I'm going to finish this one. So I'm a writer. That's what I do, living here in Greenwich Village, New York, with Joe Robinson.
And
Sorry about that.
we got a little phone in the background. So I'm Joe, as you know, and I'm the director of a reentry program at a nonprofit organization in the financial district, and I've been there for like about 3 years, a little over 3 years. And so I enjoy my work. I get to help people whose experiences were similar to mine, so I can really relate to them very well. I'm also a college student. I'm finishing up my bachelor's degree after all these years. I'll be finishing up next May, so I'm happy about that. And finally, I'm also a teacher and entrepreneur, and teach personal, among other things, I teach personal finance. So that's what I'm up to. So I'm busy. And being married is work, good work, but that keeps us busy too. Keeps me busy. Yeah,
Let the therapy session begin.
Right.
Exactly.
And I do love the fact that you guys are so old school. You still have an answering machine. Just think that's beautiful.
Me too.
And I'm just noticing too, it is your anniversary in a few days. So happy early anniversary, August 1st.
Yeah. That's the anniversary of Joe's letter from what prison? 5 Points, and he sent it to the prison ministry. So we celebrate that as well as the anniversary of our marriage.
Yeah.
So it'll be 19 years. 19 years come August 1st.
Wow.
Cool.
Wow.
So, I was thinking,
Go ahead. Yeah.
I was thinking about something earlier when we were talking about like why we pivoted from trying to make a more traditional documentary film. And one of the things that stuck, which we struggled with, was the idea that even if you guys allowed it, and we talked about this in Bronx last month, why would you want someone with a camera with you when when Joe leaves prison for the first time? Yes, it's obviously a compelling and important moment, but it made me think about what Simone Biles did. I don't know. I'm just and Naomi Osaka as well, where it's sort of like the media glare is it's beyond parasitic. It's like vampiric. It's it's really kind of amazing that these young folks are actually saying, you know what? No, this is not okay. So I am absolutely certain that Simone Biles can handle any competitive pressure. She's more than proved that. But to have, 1 million cameras and social media accounts pointed at you, I don't understand how people can be their best selves when that's happening. So to take that to your very specific, very personal situation, is this idea of, as storytellers, I think one of the questions we've started to really ask ourselves is, how can we still make, great, compelling, meaningful work, but not kind of trample on the lives of the people whose stories we want to tell? I just wanted to say that. I don't know if anyone that makes sense or would resonate with anyone, but I really do see the parallel to like what Simone Biles and those folks are going through.
Yeah, no, I agree. In fact, I said to Joe that I had this feeling in my gut about Simone leading up to the Olympics, because the expectations and the pressure were too great. Every day she was presented as the savior, basically. If anything goes wrong, it's okay because Simone will save the day. So yeah, and in our case, I think, had you suggested that, while we're very sturdy, I think the coming home is such a unique experience. particularly, and it's a once in a lifetime experience, we hope, for people coming home from prison. So it is a time of when there are so many emotions and also so much to learn and see, that having someone follow you around, it would be like one foot in one world and the other in the other world. So yeah, so it would not have worked, and I'm glad that you thought better of it.
Right, right. Well, and it by default alters the situation, even if, you know, Simone Biles is an extreme example.
Yeah.
In our case, it would have been the two of us interloping in your lives. And everyone I've ever documented, they don't understand what it takes to be documented. So even if they say yes, they still say, oh, you're coming back again, or oh, you still need more, or oh, you want to be there, or oh, you want to come to my mother's house, oh, you know, and it's like every step of the way, it's like it seeps, it has mission creep.
Yeah.
And even if you sign up for it, I don't know that anybody fully understands what they're signing up for.
Mm-hmm.
So Julie, there were a couple of questions, so I thought we'd put those in now. One from Paul, who really loved the poetic and lyrical nature of the words and the images and the footage working
We
together.
love Paul.
It's also this question of shadowing, and he's suggesting that of course would have produced an entirely different sort of film. Could you have come close to the kind of film that you produced if you had been shadowing in a more traditional documentary style, or would it have been a completely different film?
It would have been a completely different film. Absolutely. So this film posed some huge challenges. In the one hand, it was a gift because the writers, you know, had done their job already. So the letters existed, and there was this beautiful treasure trove of content to draw from. Because, you know, anybody who makes documentaries knows that you can't script in advance. That's just, it doesn't work that way. You wait until life has unfolded, you've captured things, maybe you've done a lot of interviewing, and then you script from that content, but you cannot predict what that story will be. So in this instance, we had the leg up of having the content written. And the challenge was then, how do you visualize it? What do you do with pre-existing story as opposed to story you witness? And that's usually, it's the death knell of a documentary, you know, where you show up to shoot something and everybody's like, oh, you should have been here last week. And if you missed last week, you missed the story, you got nothing. And so in this case, we had nothing, you know, visually to start with walking in the door and trying to figure out, well, how do we tell this story? How do we reconstruct without doing reenactment? How do you reconstruct the story so that a viewer immerses? And it presented this beautiful challenge, which was how to create a poetic lyrical film visually. You know, so it was really an approach that was from, you know, the way we usually work start to finish. This was almost finish to start. It was backwards.
I think also there was that desire to not intrude on their lives. I mean, regardless of what anyone, especially documentarians who do this for a living, would think, that was a decision we made that, you know, I don't know if folks who are here, who are listening, you know, who have done films or even photo essays, you know, there's definitely a wear and tear in doing that work. And having done it a long time, you know, I've actually become more sensitized to my impact on people, not less. I'm not inured or cavalier about it. I actually kind of, like, when I thought again about the first day when they would reunite, my thought was like, how disgusting that I would be there. Like, that's so creepy, you know? So I don't know if, I guess it's just the human part of me is in some ways taking over on a values and sort of ethical, from a value and ethical position. It's taking over the documentarian who will do anything to get their work, you know? And frankly, I can't subscribe to that approach anymore. Obviously, there's certain projects, certain situations, certain subjects where you have to do that. But in this case, we chose a more creative, poetic route. Also having the gift of your letters, so that we had something not only concrete, but incredibly deep and intimate and candid to work with.
Mm-hmm. I also want to give a shout out to Stephanie Corey,
Absolutely.
who edited the film and did the motion graphics. And so the visuals that are in the film, like we shot Sheila and Joe reading their letters. We actually went back to the source of the relationship, so to speak, because we ended up filming in the church where Sheila initially signed up for prison ministry, up at Riverside Church. And that was symbolically a beautiful place to stage the reading. We started there with, doing that exchange, and we lit it theatrically. We had a vision, and in some way for me, it was inspired by The Exonerated, this notion that you could take people's stories and have them read by actors on a stage. I thought, was so impactful. So somewhere that was the inspiration for doing that reading and lighting it as though it were a set piece, a theater piece. But once we had that, then became this question of, okay, now what do we do? Because if a chunk of the relationship is before they've even met, then we don't even want to show that footage until you're, in this instance, the finished film, you're about four to 5 minutes in before you see that scene. So again, the film is constructed chronologically. What we ended up doing is pulling footage of Ed's, a certain amount of stock footage. We used the handwriting. Steph took everybody's writing. She took their letters and created a font that she could put in motion. And then even the credits at the end, our credits are all done in everybody's handwriting. But it was to honor this idea that these letters stood their own ground as a device, as a motif. And so, coming up with that balance of when and where does text on screen become its own element, when was it too much, and and how to use that in an elegant way so it had it had a comfortable balance. And then she pulled a lot of tricks out of her hat, with motion graphics in terms of taking footage and superimposing, and we did a lot of colorizing so that we could construct a feeling out of sort of found footage.
So I have a question for Sheila and Joe. I mean, the letters are the basis of the film. Did you offer them? I mean, did you keep all your letters? Were you kind of the source of offering them up? And how did you feel about these incredibly personal, intimate letters being the basis of the film and used?
We did save almost all of our letters. They were so important to our experience, to our relationship, to our lives. So I couldn't imagine throwing them away. So one after another, as they came in, I mean, they were all over the place, but I knew I had them. As far as sharing them, I did have trepidations, and it wasn't, I would have this thought that, oh, our letters are out there, someone has our letters. But I really trusted Ed and Julie. I really did. And I don't believe I would have been willing to share them had I not trusted them as human beings, as people, before even filmmakers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean,
for me, and I was just gonna say briefly, for me, I didn't realize we had all those letters. Like, in others, it was just a connective tissue that ran through our marriage, and even before we got married. And I kept them for many on my end, like Sheila's letters. I kept many of them. But Sheila would type her letters on a computer.
Most of them.
Mm-hmm. So that's made it easier for her to keep them. Whereas I wrote most of mine, like hand wrote most of mine, even when I had access to a computer. And so anyway, so I was surprised that we had so many letters. And then when I came home, we organized them in chronological order. So we did that. But like Sheila, I had some concerns about the letters because some of them were very adult, right? So I was like, oh,
with the film. That's the
yeah.
that,
Yes, I felt like we were outed in a way. So, but anyway, we're human. So
Yeah.
Actually, I'm sorry, David. I mean, I was wondering because you already probably had to go through the the indignity,
Censors
the censors, right? So you already knew that someone in the prison system or some folks had been reading your letters. So I wonder how that made you feel, or
yeah. So the
did it
way
impact what you wrote?
Yeah, the way they ordinarily do it in New York State now, when I say now, as opposed to stories I've heard about in the 60s and 70s, like pre-Attica uprising, because that was part of the issue, is that they would censor the letters, like, I mean, just incredibly. So they don't do that as much now. The volume of letters is too much for them to do it. So what they do is in the mailroom, they just open the letters to make sure there's no contraband included in the envelope. So they really don't read them unless they have you on their radar. Like they suspect that you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. So they probably didn't read, most of it. I hope not anyway. Who cares now? I'm home now. So who cares?
Yours might have been flagged for the juicy bits. Everybody's like, hey, Joe's got one. Come on over.
Right. Probably.
I did think about that, actually.
They got Sheila's attention, so maybe they got their attention too. So, yeah.
I mean, one of the other interesting things is, I mean, Sheila, you're formerly a writer, you're formerly a foreign correspondent, you're writing novels and so on. But Joe, you're equally the writer in the film here with the letters. Did you think of yourself were you someone who wrote letters before being incarcerated, or was this because it was the only way of communicating, it became a really significant way of communicating? How did you come to write?
Yeah.
Because they're equally poetic.
No, that's a good question. So I didn't, let me see, in the very beginning of my stint, I didn't see myself as a writer. We're talking like 1992. So 10 years before I met Sheila, or she came into the picture. But I did write a lot because I read a lot. I've always been a voracious reader, and I like to read, I like to write. And so, hold on 1 second. Got a little background noise. But anyway, so by the time I started writing Sheila, I had been writing a lot, for I was involved with different quote unquote inmate organizations, was in leadership positions and roles. And so often you have to write. And so that's what I did. But I think that through our letters, I certainly became a better writer. I actually, I thought I was a good enough writer, but I think I mimicked some of Sheila's writing because I can appreciate really good writing, and she's a really good writer. And so just like in books that I read or have read, I will, I think that's what writers do. You mimic other writers. And so I've become a better writer over the years, much more focused on the nuances of words and language. So.
There's a question from Christiane. She's also very complimentary and moved by the film, and thinks one of its powers is to challenge actually stereotype of people who are incarcerated, particularly people of color who are incarcerated. And her question is, how can it be seen more broadly? And this is a question for everybody, I think. How do you get the film out beyond the art world, the documentary world, the film world, the photographic world, and so on, so that it can have an impact? What's happening on that front? What are you thinking about that? And what are your ambitions on that?
So, I mean, definitely this film is designed to destigmatize incarcerated people. I mean, at its core, in terms of the impact work it could achieve, because it's a humanizing film, and it's intentionally so. It's intentionally a film that is not about Joe's crime, that is not about incarceration, that is not about, again, what happens when he gets out and questions of reentry. It is a film very much so about a man and a woman falling in love. And in that act, it is a film that's humanizing of an incarcerated human being. And so what I'd like to see is that we're able to use the film in, with targeted audiences, because I believe in going deep rather than wide with the work that we produce, because I think we can change minds, we can move people, but you don't do it just because you have, the film actually first showed on NPR, they have a picture blog. And so it was seen, I think, in the first week by like 85,000 people. It had a lot of hits, right? But that number doesn't tell me that anybody's heart and mind was changed. It just is a number. And so, when we do events like this, when we were recently at the Bronx Documentary Center, the discussion is so much around these questions of what was the experience like for Joe, and how does Joe explore a normal relationship within the context of being incarcerated. And it's so much of a different kind of conversation around incarceration that's really healthy to have. What I'd like to see is that we position it with groups that work with destigmatizing incarceration, that work with, improving the dynamics of mass incarceration so we can reduce those numbers. And that begins by not disinheriting a huge proportion of the population because they've done something wrong. They have committed a stupid act somewhere in their lives, and then we basically have written them off as participants in society. So I would like to see that we can share this film, because the conversation it breeds gets to that point without being about that point.
Sheila and Joe, how do you think about the question of the impact of the film? Did you go into the process of making the film hoping that it would have an impact, or that you would be able to use it in your work, particularly you, Joe, in terms of being a director of reentry services? Or is that something that you're addressing later once it's made?
Yeah, for me, I didn't think of it like that. I just thought of it as an opportunity to, I think, to end the stigma, or to at least address the stigma of incarceration and people who are married to people who are in prison or were in prison or jail. So I think primarily that was my main thinking. And for me, it's cathartic. I mean, I think one thing about prison, the experience of prison, especially when you do long sentences like I did, is that it never goes away. It's just the truth, right? And so, and that, I can unpack that, or a person can unpack that, just that subject alone. But by that I mean that, no matter what, or no matter how I feel, at least I've been home almost 5 years now, and so no matter what, I feel like that experience is with me, has stayed with me, the good and the bad. I mean, it wasn't all bad, believe it or not. I've grown tremendously over those years and became the person that I continue to strive to be. So I wanted to, I thought it was important to share that and to be, vulnerable. I'm comfortable being vulnerable, being human. And I wanted people, for my part, I wanted people to see what I wanted Sheila to see, is my humanity. I mean, that's it, plain and simple. That's it for me.
Yeah, I would, I agree that when we went into it, I don't think I was so focused on how will this land, in terms of what will be the impact. Not initially, but what I knew was that we had a beautiful relationship, a beautiful story. And as we were going through it and really focusing on our letters and our growth as human beings, I began to really appreciate the power of it, of that beauty, You know, it's like, oh, well, this is a beautiful story. But I began to appreciate its power. And in my daily life, one person at a time, my telling of our story has made a difference. Because initially people are like, yeah, but you were a reporter at the New York Times. You were a foreign correspondent. Why would you be with a man in prison? And I would say, I'm not with a man in prison. I'm with Joe. And I think this film showed that. So I began to really appreciate the power of the story through the telling of it.
Yeah.
That was beautifully said.
Yeah, beautifully said. And the importance of a film is it's an amplifier. You know, as a medium, it can tell that story to your satisfaction, so you genuinely can see your experience in it. It can do that to so many more people than you personally can do that. You know, so that's really like when we ask ourselves, like, why do we do this? Because it's a very voyeuristic profession. It's, you know, there are those who tell stories and those who live stories, you know. So it's an interesting, because you go back and back and back. So the why, the purpose of it, what's the purpose? And how is this piece of media helping anybody? You know, because there's a lot of voyeuristic media that doesn't seem to be moving the needle at all.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a question from Megan, an important process question.
I'm going to turn this off.
It's also an interesting film because it's short. So, I mean, a question for you, Ed and Julie, did you intend to make a short film? And if so, what was the reason behind that? And how long did it take to make? Because often the short things can take an awful long time as well. It may be sometimes even longer than the long things with deciding what to focus on.
Well, I think once we shifted from the idea of doing like a print-based, you know, images, still images and text approach, then, you know, we've worked so much in the last 10, 13 years, whatever it is, making these short films. It's certainly a niche that we've become quite accustomed to working in and comfortable working in. And also we recognize it as a format that addresses the moment we're all living in, where, you know, not only our attention spans shorter, but that there's such a large volume of material and information and media where we're bombarded with every day that sometimes a shorter piece that is really well done can have a greater impact than a film, you know, a 90-minute film that you're laboring to get through, you know? So anyway, obviously a great 90-minute film, that's not working that way. So anyway, so that was, I think, the reason we made the decision once we decided to do a film to make it sort of on a shorter film. In terms of how long it took,
years.
Years.
Well, it took us years to make. And you know, again, we're juggling multiple projects at any given time. This was an unfunded film. So then what happens to your passion projects is they keep going back burner because paying work comes in and it's like, whoop, sorry, Sheila and Joe, you're going back burner again. And at some point, Ed would turn to me and he's like, come on, we got to finish. I mean,
I was a total nag.
He was like, we got to finish this. Sheila and Joe, if like, you know, shared all this and they're going to be questioning if we're ever going to finish this film. We got to finish. So I will say this was a gift of pandemic that we finally finished because work came to such a screeching halt that passion work got back on the front burner. The really important work got back on the front burner.
But that's an interesting point for folks out there like that. I felt a great sense of responsibility once you guys had labored through a bunch of days with us and, you know, filming you and getting you to do, you know, just all that you shared. That then there is this sense of responsibility as a media maker that you can't just drop it, you know.
Deliver.
This is not about money. This is not about anything related to like professional stuff. It's really just about kind of human, ethical, moral way of working, really, you know. And you know, I always feel so fortunate when people allow me to or when they share their stories with me, and that then I am imbued with a sense of responsibility to handle it with care and come through. So
yeah,
and obviously Julie feels the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was an unfunded film. Was that Was that a choice to make it a passion project, or you were?
Definitely not a choice. And we did apply for a number of things, and we applied for editing, fellowships and producing fellowships and all kinds of things. And, anybody who is on this call or who watches it down the road, do not be discouraged, because we all get rejected a lot. And so, it's by hell or high water, you got to make these films anyway. And then even after finishing it, trying to place it was challenging, because it's kind of a, it's an anomaly of a film. It's not a straight documentary. It's not a news piece. It's not experimental. It sort of doesn't really have its category, so even showing it is challenging. But I want to get back to one other thing, just because I feel so strongly about the impact work with films. And I feel strongly that, a short film is usually more valuable for impact work, because we can show a short film, and short could be up to half an hour. And then there's enough time for the conversation. And so, watching a film that you're experiencing alone, but if you're watching it and then processing with others, it becomes a communal experience that is deeply, deeply moving. And, there's a stickiness about, the conversation afterwards, that it sticks to you, that I think is the most valuable piece of the equation. So for me and our company, Talking Eyes Media, half of what we do is outreach and distribution and partnering with organizations. Half of it is making the media, but the other half is equally important.
I think that's a really crucial point on impact, because films don't have impact by themselves. The audience has to be active on that front. And you saying that half the work is actually creating the conditions for the possible impact. I think that's very important for anyone on this call, or to think about that. That's you're only half done when you made the images, told the story. Got a personal question about Joe's son and family. Has he seen the film, and what's his reaction to the film?
My son has not seen the film. He's in Connecticut with his maternal grandmother. And I don't know how to put it, but we haven't been in touch for a couple of months. It's one of those weird things. And I say weird because my son is 31, and we've always had a good relationship. I think now we don't, but I'm not really even clear. To be honest, it's one of those things that, that I would expect with like a teenager. And I don't mean that in a, in a pejorative way. It's just kind of like, I don't understand his thinking. So yeah, so he hasn't seen it, but my stepson Sean has seen it.
Right. And what was Sean's reaction?
Sean cried. He was at a showing, Bronx Documentary Center, and he cried several times and was really, really moved by the film. He really was. And in fact, he said, "Mom, let me know that, next time you're going to have an audience in person. I want all my buddies to be there. So we'll see." Yeah, but he loved it.
That's great. Yeah. Well, we're coming up on the hour, which is kind of the normal time to finish. I don't know if you guys want to make any final comments or observations. It's been, we've demonstrated the value of conversation here, I think, around film.
Well, I guess I just wanted to say that I feel, certainly in the United States, when it comes to incarceration and the whole way that we deal with this aspect of our society, it's absolutely horrible and cruel. And a story like this reminds me that how can I put this? It's so easy to sort of fall into that trap and assume that everyone incarcerated is bad and all this, all the negative negativity around it. And it just reminds me that we have to really pull back from that way of thinking. And I hope as a society, we can shift to a more, well, first of all, less people incarcerated. That is full stop, the first thing. And secondly, that we then revamp how we deal with folks who we imprison to try to actually rehabilitate them and actually care for them and not make them, but allow them to feel valued and valuable, because otherwise it's a sort of a psychotic way for society to go. And it's incredibly cruel.
It is. It's incredibly cruel. And I'll just add, just to follow on Ed's point, I think one of the things that I hope people take from the film is that so many people who are in prison have transformed their thinking and their lives. They are not the kids who decided that the way out or the way to glory or riches is violence or a gun or an offense that is on the wrong side of the law. They really become reflective, thoughtful, and begin to tap into their potential. So change comes often so early in their bid, as they call them, but so many of them are left with sentences that are 40, 50 years. So while they've changed, it's not honored or realized or respected. So that's just in terms of the whole issue of mass incarceration.
Yeah.
I just want to add one other thing, is because this touches on a relationship, folks in prison have families. And so when you incarcerate someone, you're penalizing a family, and that discussion rarely happens. And so the whole dynamic between those inside and outside, the people have children outside, and the communication and the, how does a mate deal with it? How do the children deal with it? And you guys experienced Joe being moved a couple of times, and that's disruptive as well. We know there are issues of communication. You were letter writing, but we hear all the time about, the access to telephones and how people get billed exorbitant amounts of money to be able to have phone calls. So I think that there is an entire universe of human beings impacted with, each person who is incarcerated. So just as we think about, again, what story are we telling? It's not the individual. It's a much more community-wide suffering that we need to address.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That's well said. I'll just add real quickly. I'll just close out with, because you mentioned a few things that were like operative words in terms of like, human beings, which is a common issue, but it's important that people not forget that that's what we're talking about. That at the end of the day, we're talking about human beings, right? So whether a person commits a crime or is accused of committing a crime or whatever, we're talking about human beings. So that's key, that we first, kind of recognize that we're not talking about like a different species or something like that. We see these caricatures on TV, or we read about them, we hear about them on the radio, and we think we know people who have committed crimes or were accused of committing crimes who are in prison, and we don't. We really, really don't. So that's one thing I want to point out. But another thing that you alluded to, Julie, is trauma. Now, we don't talk about that in this story, but you can't talk about incarceration without talking about trauma, like really. And I don't mean, trauma like, like just in prison. There's a whole bunch of trauma that comes with prison. There's post-incarceration trauma, but there's trauma that preceded prison. And for some people, for many people, is what caused them or led them, even if it's tangentially, to prison. So I think that's a good discussion that needs to be talked about. How when you talk about families, we're talking about people who already experience trauma, and before the loved one goes to prison, and then it's exacerbated by incarceration, like you said, with the phone bills, the long distances, the travel, and all the other expenses, the lack of positive role models for the kids left behind. And then they come home, often, especially if a person's done a lot of time, like myself, the relationships are frayed, or people have estranged, that people move on, start new relationships, everything. So it's ripe for a good long discussion.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, thank you very much to the four of you. Thank you, Julie and Ed, for sharing the film and the process, and thank you very much, Sheila and Joe, for being here to discuss it as well. And
Right,
as I
thank
said
you.
earlier, showing up the power of conversation around the film.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Dave.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good
Bye,
night,
Bye-bye.
everybody, and thanks for
Bye.
Take care.